I'm going to start recording. All right, here we go. Welcome to Shoulder of Orion. Oh, I'm sorry, this isn't Shoulder of Orion. I do this all the time. Yeah. Welcome to Perfect Organism, the Alien Saga podcast. I'm your host, J.M. Prater, and I'm joined today by a great person, special guest, Aaron Percival, Corporal Hicks from AVP Galaxy. And today this is one of a series of 4 and probably more spotlight on fandom that we feel like was necessary to just kind of talk to people who have been involved in the alien fandom and just kind of create a better sense of unity and community. So welcome on the show, Aaron.
No worries. Thank you for inviting me, and thanks for having me on first.
Absolutely.
All this.
Yeah. So, of course, I know you from way back. I think I've been in contact with you in some way for probably 10 years at least. I think. I don't know.
Definitely about 7 or so.
Yeah, because I was active on the boards for a long time before I kind of tore off and started doing my own thing.
Mm-hmm. I definitely remember from the Prometheus days.
Yes, and so if no one knows, my handle on the AVP Galaxy forums was This Bethesda Sea, and I was a furious poster and all-around engager on those amazing forums, which are still very well and very alive, especially in the age of social media where forums are kind of going away. That one has remained really an active source of community, so I think it's awesome. And again, that's kind of where I met. I didn't realize that you were involved. I knew that your name was Corporal Hicks, and then I didn't realize that your involvement in AVP Galaxy until probably a few months later. But really, I just wanted to kind of talk to you about your intro into the alien fandom and how that led up to AVP Galaxy.
Oof, how long we got? Okay. It's funny because I always feel really young when it comes to the fandom, but when I think about it, I've been around for about 17 years now. Maybe more.
Are you 30 yet? Are you in your 30s?
I'm 28. I'm 29 Nearly. In a couple of months. So I think my first experience with Alien, with the series, was when I was 5. Well, actually, I tell a lie. It was the day before I turned 5. So it's been a part of my life for a long time. I don't know if you know about this ride. Are you aware of something called Aliens Ride at the Speed of Fright?
I am aware of it, and that's it. Like, I know of it, but I don't know anything about it.
Okay, it's so we're talking about 1995, and it was like an old virtual reality 4D, what passed for those kind of experiences back in those days. So it's like a motion controlled cinema experience. So your chairs were moving around and you were throwing about to some really cheesy footage on the screen. So I remember queuing up to get into the thing. We'd gone literally the day before my 5th birthday because it was at a theme park we have over here called American Adventure. And I remember like a model of an alien hanging over the entrance to the attraction. And for ages, I actually thought I'd made this up because I never knew anybody else who'd heard of this ride or this attraction. But then when the anthology came out about 8 years ago, they had the footage of that, of the ride on the DVD, on the Blu-ray, sorry. So it is actually on there for folk to watch. The pre-footage and the actual footage, and it was cheesy as hell. but it has one of my all-time favorite Star Trek actors in it. Actually, it's one of the main guys, Jeffrey Combs. I don't know how familiar you are with Star Trek.
Oh yeah, I'm a fan.
Yeah, so Wei-Yun and Shran. But that led to about 5 years of nightmares. Because when I got home, we started to watch Aliens. We got halfway through it, got to the chestburster scene with Barbara Coles, and that was it. Turned off. Couldn't handle it. But I was fascinated with it so much for the next 5 years. nightmares nearly every night. I slept face down because my logic at that age was with my chest against the mattress, a chest burster couldn't come out if I was infected.
Oh, wow.
So it had quite an effect on me. But when I was 10, my dad forced me to watch the whole thing through and sort of face the fears kind of thing. And from that point on, I was then just obsessed. And at that point, I ventured online. And I don't know if you'll remember this website. It was a site called AVP News.
I don't.
Okay, so back in the early 2000s, there was like a trio of big three websites. There was AVP News, there was Planet AVP, and there was AVP Nation, I think it was. So they were like the big community back then. And AVP News was my first sort of venture onto online fandom. And the news groups as well. I'm that old that I remember the male news groups.
Me too.
alt.cult.movies.alien, I think it was.
I remember searching those furiously for news. I mean, yeah, those were actually some exciting times because there wasn't a community. That was it. And news would travel there. You'd end up finding out stuff that you didn't know about, even in the age of the internet.
Mm-hmm. But it was still slow internet. I mean, I would say it's probably only the last, I don't know, 8 years or so maybe that we're now at that instantaneous, information dissemination thing, largely due to Facebook and Twitter, I guess. They're their own, microcosms of the internet. But yeah, it's that was my first toe dipping, and it was also my first real experience with fandom. And how divisive fandom was, and how divisive Alien fandom was, even back then. One of the first things I remember is seeing somebody bitching about aliens and James Cameron and the Queen. And at that point, I'm like, what? Why are you people hating on these on this film? So, yeah, I've been around that sort of attitude, that sort of fandom for a long time. So that's entry into fandom. To AVP Galaxy, there's still a bit going, mate. There's still a bit of a story to this.
Oh, good.
So a few years later, when I was 12 or 13, I can't remember exactly, I taught myself HTML over a weekend, and I was still obsessed with AVP with Alien and Predator. More so Alien, to be honest. So I taught myself HTML over a weekend. I made this crappy little website that was about me and about my interests, blah, 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 blah. But then I eventually turned it towards making my own Alien and Predator focused website. So over the next 3 or 4 years, I worked on this awful website called AVP World. And it was during this time that AVP Galaxy popped up, and another website called The Ultimate Predator. So we were all us people who were running these websites, and we knew each other. We were in a friendly competition kind of thing. So I ended up being quite close friends with a lot of those guys. So Darkness was the guy who ran AVP Galaxy, still does. We co-admin it together, and a fella called Ian ran Ultimate Predator. So fast forward to the first AVP film coming out, and it was lackluster. Darkness shut down AVP Galaxy because he was that disappointed over it. I lasted a little bit longer, but I stopped working on AVP World because I was sick of doing all the technical stuff myself.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to do editorial stuff. So I ended up actually helping out at a reincarnate version of AVP News. The guys who ran that tried to bring it back to life about the mid 2000s, because that disappeared for a while. Because that was sort of Fox sponsored back in the day. So they were in close contact with the people at Fox. Their webmasters actually ended up being credited on some of the later games. I think they got credits in the AVPs and Extinction and Concrete Jungle. So they were pretty heavily involved. So Fox actually owned their domain, the web address, and when their lease ran out, Fox didn't renew it for whatever reason, but still kept ownership of it, if I remember rightly. But about 8 years later or whatever, they tried to bring it back to life, and I jumped at the chance to help these guys who were my first real sort of community online. So a lot of my attitude to community and fandom I attribute to some of the experiences I had on that website. I always think back to me asking about the old card game from from about 2000s, and I remember some guy just offering to send me his spares. So that's the sort of attitude that I always carry forward with me when it comes to this kind of thing. Just kindness to strangers,
totally,
and
absolutely.
Kindness to your community. Yeah. So I jumped at the chance to work with one of these guys who ran this website, and then he left, and I was left holding the bag on this other website, which was a language that I didn't really understand. I knew HTML, but I didn't know PHP, so I couldn't really do anything with the website. I had no access to the admin stuff on the forum, so I gave up. No, then the review for AVP 2, which would become AVP Requiem, came out. The leaked script review. I don't know if you remember that, but it was.
I do. I mean, there was so much going on then too. I mean, although admittedly I'm not an AVP fan, although I enjoyed the first film, I don't think I'm necessarily good. I'm more of an Alien fan, but I was active certainly with AVP Galaxy and those sites, because those were the only sites around really that you could kind of find somewhat of a community, a forum community.
They've come and gone so much over those years. I mean, like you said earlier, ours is probably the only old school, really forum style community that is genuinely alive and kicking. But back then, I remember so many. I was a member of so many different forums and a regular visitor to so many sites. I still remember so many old ones. Alien Experience, Alien Legend, pretty much anything hosted by Planet AVP. And you can still visit these websites with Wayback Machine, actually. I do tend to take nostalgia trips and look at, these old 2000, mid-2000 websites just to, have a little flashback to the what I tend to think of like the golden age of online AVP Alien. And I will always abbreviate Alien and Predator down to AVP. That's just how that was where the community was when I came in. It was all associated together.
And that's I want to kind of ask you about that. Like, were you always a fan? Obviously, as everyone knows, you admin and help run AVP Galaxy. I mean, really, I think Corporal Hicks and your first name and last name are almost interchangeable with AVP. But are you sounds kind of like an odd question, but are you a fan of the crossover, or is it just kind of where you landed?
The concept of Alien vs Predator is the only crossover concept that I genuinely think works. But I came into this when the concept wasn't so solid. So Alien is the reason I'm interested in Predator. It's as simple as that.
Got it.
Alien, it was my fear of Alien that affected me all those years. It was a fascination with the creature and the films because of that fear. I've got so many memories of earlier on in my years that simply revolve around fear of the alien. Hiding behind the settee, watching my dad play Alien Trilogy on the Sega Saturn. Being too scared to even look at the game box, which had that awesome Alien 3 sort of promo grab of the alien. But then another game came out called Alien vs Predator. So there's been lots of Alien vs Predator games over the years. It's not just 2000 when well, what's known as AVP 2000, AVP Classic these days, came out. They've been around for ages. The comics were all prior to this, whatever. But it was through that game that I was exposed to AVP, and to Predator, and it was the whole reason AVP Galaxy exists is because Darkness did it as a resource site for AVP 2, the sequel to AVP Classic. And it's that game that I spent so much of my sort of teenage years playing. A lot of multiplayer on that game, a lot of single player on that game. I mean, I know you're not really a gamer yourself, but that was the big thing at the time, and it was popular. It was good. It was a good game. It was a good story. And then the films solid the concept. Because as much as I'm the type of person that will always try and look at things to enjoy in stuff. What's the point in devoting my time to franchise and entries that are going to anger me? So I will always sort of look on the bright side of stuff. So I can enjoy AVP. There's stuff in it I like, but Requiem I won't give any leeway to. So yeah, I like the concept. I like the old games. Some of the newer comics and the novels I enjoy as well, but I've always been more of an Alien fan. But through my introduction to Predator through AVP, through the crossover, I'm a big Predator fan as well. But definitely always more leaning on the Alien side. Yeah.
Do you? Again, this is an obvious question, but I'm asking it because sometimes it's not an obvious answer. Obviously, your username is Corporal Hicks. Is Aliens your favorite of the trilogy, or is it another?
I have no favorite of the trilogy.
That's right. We've been over this before. Yeah. You just you love them all.
1, 2, and 3. Perfect trilogy for me. Obviously, I understand Alien 3 has plenty of flaws, but I love that as much as I love the other two. And whichever ones I want to watch, it depends entirely on my mood at the time.
Yeah. I would say I look at them. I mean, I have a favorite just because of where, as you know, where I met a specific film in the time of my life, so it speaks to me more. But I look, much like the Blade Runner films, for me it's all one story. It's all kind of the arc of Ripley, and it's all really gripping and really well made, despite the problems that Alien 3 had. It's 3 incredibly made films that that you'd be hard-pressed to make again.
The Ripley's through line of all of them is just, obviously they weren't made with the other stuff in consideration, but the way they all crafted it together works perfectly for me. Despite all of the other flaws within Alien 3, the end of that is just, the end of the story is just perfect to me. Love it.
I would agree.
And tonally as well, I'm a morbid person myself, obviously with the fascination of the fear of the alien. So the darker tone and the nihilistic tone of Alien 3 just resonates quite a lot with me.
Yeah, as it does with me. Now, in terms of your relationship, and I mean your in the sense of AVP Galaxy, I know that you guys have somewhat of a, maybe working relationship isn't the right word, but a good communication with some people at Fox. How did that start? And I know that you've been able to interview and speak to a lot of people. Was that just a slow process of you, much like with us at Perfect Organism? You just kind of reach out and see who'll talk to you, and the ones who say yes, you interview, and that's that. Is that kind of how things happened with you? And I know that you, obviously for Alien Covenant, you were flown to, or I don't know how far you lived from that premiere,
but you were not very far.
Yeah, so you were involved in the premiere. You were considered an influencer.
I wasn't known as an influencer, actually.
Oh, you weren't. But
no.
What was your?
It's funny. I say funny. It amuses me. So it's all sort of tied together. So I never finished explaining how I got involved with AVP Galaxy. This all sort of goes around the same sort of time frame as to when it all sort of took off. So like I said, I was friends with Darkness already, and I was friends with this other chap, this Ian. We'd all shut down, but we'd all shut down, around about the same time. I'd managed to last until that Ain't It Cool News review came out for Requiem, what was Requiem at the time. And then Darkness, a few months later, messaged me asking me if he could have the reviews and the various interviews I'd already done at that point. So at this point, it's just a couple of comic reviews. It's a couple of interviews with people who'd worked on fan stuff. Or I think I'd even managed to chat to one of the guys who worked on the old card game that I mentioned. So I said, yeah, whatever, go for it. Do you want some help? And I've been with him ever since. So I've been working on that since 2006.
Okay, wow.
And at that point, I kicked into it. I just went for it. So I got a lot of interviews with. This was when Dark Horse Press were kicking out the books again. So they did like 6 Alien books. They did 4 Predator books. Funnily enough, the Predator books were a lot better than the Alien books. But at this point, I went to these authors and I said, I work for the website. Can I chat to you about the thing and do a little Q&A, whatever? And that was really when I sort of got my first experience chatting to, quotation marks, official people involved with the franchise. I hate how much of my early stuff's actually viewable online because I was 16, 17, 18 years old, just messing about online. So there's a real sort of how I evolved with skill. Accessible to view online.
Yeah.
It's same as the podcast, actually. I went back to listen to some of the older ones as prep for another one I was doing, and just hearing the vast difference in quality between. Oh, it's embarrassing. But yeah, so we proper kicked into it. The new film was coming out, and we were all over it. And I can't remember exactly how it happened, but I think it must have been some leaked photos or something that we'd shared. And Fox got in touch with us to ask us to take them down. And it was as simple as that. That started a relationship with people at Fox that eventually turned into a good relationship, to the point where I was invited down to the premiere of Covenant as a guest of this same lady that I've been talking to for 10, 12 years now.
Wow. Yeah.
So that's why I didn't go down as an influencer. I went down as a guest of this department that I'd had such a long contact with. And that was an experience. That was the first time I've ever done anything like that. That was the first time I'd ever been to a press junket, and it was absolutely terrifying.
Yeah, of course, I was there, at least via, I think they were broadcasting via social media, and, seeing a lot of people on camera, like Louis Nostromo, and it was a huge event. It was a huge event. I'd never seen anything like that, and of course, with Prometheus, and I'd like to talk about that a little bit, just because in terms of AVP Galaxy, just because Prometheus was this heralding return of Ridley Scott to sci-fi, the first science fiction film he's made since Blade Runner, and the interest in it was through the roof. So fans were just clamoring, and those trailers were amazing, and all of these things. And I'm just curious kind of what, on your end, and in terms of AVP Galaxy, this is really before social media was king. So it was 2012, and people were on social media, but it's not like it is today. So I'm curious what that energy was like.
It's funny, because I always say it's funny. It amuses me personally because of how much before Prometheus came out, we would all sort of say things like, "Oh, we just need Ridley Scott to come back for Alien 5," stuff like that. And then all this buzz around an Alien. It came out as an Alien remake to start with. That was what was first sort of shared around all the outlets by his daughter. It was somebody married to somebody he was related to, was who it was originally came out as. Carl Rinch, something like that.
Yeah.
So that, you know, at that point it's all like, ooh, a remake, who's this guy, kind of thing.
Yeah, and
then,
they wanted him to direct it, right, first, and Ridley was going to produce it.
Yeah, so that's what the initial news was. And then it was Fox won't go forward with it without Ridley, and then somewhere along the lines the story changes to Ridley's always wanted to, or was always going to do it, kind of thing. So, you know, there was definite sort of fascination, but it wasn't until I think really it was Ridley Scott's doing an Alien prequel that we all sort of maybe felt a bit of hope, I guess. I mean, obviously that would all sort of go down the pan. And make everybody realize that Ridley was one cog in a machine that made Alien great. But more fool us for saying wouldn't it be great for Ridley Scott to come back. But there was definite excitement there. And I think probably for a long time when it was announced that it wasn't going to be an Alien prequel, but it was going to be we didn't know what it was going to be. When Prometheus was announced as Prometheus, nobody had a clue what it was going to be. So for, a while, I didn't really know whether it was something I should be excited about or not. But then, when the obvious Alien connections kept being, more obvious, it got interesting. It got interesting again, and it was a fun film to follow. Those first trailers were. I remember the excitement of that. That was amazing.
Yeah, that siren, that haunting siren from the first film, and just those visuals. I mean, the visuals for Prometheus are just sumptuous. They're incredible. I will never forget that time. And I remember too, just the kind of vocal acrobats, or that Lindelof was doing. Like, is this an Alien film? I don't know. It's kind of a little bit stupid, but
very much so.
And you knew from the trailers them using the sound, that the siren from Alien. Of course, it's an Alien film. It's just titled something different because he wanted to kind of step away from maybe the constraints, of the. But it was so exciting, and even in fact, I mean, I will also credit AVP Galaxy for my first, even though. On retrospect, for my first interview with somebody involved in an Alien film, which was Carlos Huante, and I remember all of that. He got upset with me because he thought I was with AVP Galaxy and I wasn't intending, but that's what happened, and it was this embarrassing mess. But really, you guys released it. You released the interview, which was fantastic.
It's still up.
Yeah. I was reading it not too long ago, to be honest with you. And but yeah, I mean, really, AVP Galaxy was the focal point of fandom at the time. And then, of course, then Prometheus released, and we know the story after that. Yeah.
Do you remember that really good blog that was out at the same time? Alien prequel news.
Yeah, I think so.
He always gave us a run for our money. I enjoy friendly competition, like that kind of thing. I actually ended up meeting him in person because so when the trailer came out was when we obviously knew it was Alien. It was space jockeys. It was the aesthetic was there
totally.
As well, to some degree, and the sounds and stuff. But before all that, the months before all that, we were getting all these leaked set photos and the airlock that looked like the Nostromo airlock, the sort of Giga architecture that was in a lot of the leaked photos and stuff as well. So that was all fun. leading up to it, going, yeah, that's definitely an alien film. That's definitely an alien film. And then the trailer comes out, and that is definitely an alien film. And there was the guy who ran this blog, I think his name was Christian. We ended up both speaking at like a Prometheus speculative panel at a convention at the Space Centre in the UK in Leicester. And I remember one of the days there was a brilliant quote. So it was at the Space Centre in, like I said, so it was, it was still open to the public and stuff. And we're all sat there. There's me, there's Christian, there's Ian Nathan, who writes for Empire. He wrote one of the books, Alien Vault. He wrote the Alien Vault. And we're all up there sort of chatting about this speculative connections between Prometheus and Alien. And this little old woman in the crowd. So we're all throwing out words like space jockeys. And this woman in the crowd, when the mic's given out to everybody to ask for questions, starts having a go at us all because it's got nothing to do with horses.
Nothing to do with horses?
Yeah, so because we're just using jockey.
Oh!
That was so random, and it was one of the things that I always remembered from that. Was this little old woman shouting at us because it had nothing to do with horses. Because we had like leaked photos showing up as like a special treat and stuff, and like new exclusive photos that had been given to everybody. So that was awesome. Sorry, I digressed there.
No, that's all right. Actually, I'll never forget like seeing some of those leaked photos from Prometheus, and we got to see the landing part of the ship, and it had those stripes on it, just like the Nostromo, and just everybody freaking out like, oh my god, it looks so much like the Nostromo. Like, I just remember freaking out. And you remember the first image that we saw of Prometheus, and it was of Shaw being blown away
in the dust storm. Yeah,
yeah. I just
not having a clue what it was at the time.
Yeah. Oh man, that was I in some ways it's disappointing because the excitement was so much fun and the films weren't as fun.
Well, that is half the fun of these these films is the excitement leading up to them. For how crap Requiem ended up being, that was so much fun. When waiting for the Red Band trailer and dissecting all the gore and stuff, and following all the lead up to the first AVP. Since that was the first film I ever got to track. Resurrection had come out 6-7 years before that, so I was still in school at that point. I never followed that, but that's sort of why the first AVP will always be a little bit special to me, because it was the first things I followed avidly online, and it's been the same with it was the same with Prometheus. It was the same with Covenant as well. So regardless of the ultimate finished experience, that lead up is just always so much fun.
Oh, it really, really, truly is. I mean, it is half the fun, and hopefully one day we can get a film or whatever that unifies us in the excitement and build up as much as in the actual final product. At least more than the last couple of films have, for sure.
It's a shame you're not really into gaming as much, because Alien Isolation was probably been one of the only real recent times where the lead up and then the final release was just brilliant.
Oh, I agree. I played Isolation, actually.
You did, didn't you?
Yeah, with my friend Dan, who is one of the partners on the Blade Runner podcast. And it's incredible. It is really incredible, and it's a really amazing game. I just don't have the patience for games. I don't feel like I have the time for them, especially now that I'm running I just don't have the time. Yeah. But I will agree with you. I think that fandom is unified behind that game and the aesthetics of the game. I mean, even as you very well know, Neil Blomkamp is very much like, man, this game is the shit. And if we're going to make the sequel or whatever he was going to do, we need to look at what they did and kind of replicate that to some degree. So I'm with you there.
Yeah, he talked about how that had influenced his sort of design aesthetic, didn't he, during the lead up? And it's funny because that's another one that started off with people up in arms. I vividly remember, when it came out that it was Amanda Ripley as the protagonist, everybody being like, what the hell? How does that work? Why does that need to work? And then it ends up being this brilliant experience, and this very sort of emotional and personal experience that just worked out so well in execution. So, to go from the sort of fan upheaval that is pretty typical of anything that you're not expecting to it being executed so well was a fun go as well, fun experience.
Yeah, and just that everyone did welcome it, and it was a really plausible story. There's a whole who was Ripley's daughter, and some of that is a little bit. For most people have only seen the theatrical cut of Aliens. They haven't seen the special edition. Of course, a lot of us hardcore fans have, and most of us that's the only version we watch. But a lot of us don't even know she had a daughter. So it's a game about this that features a character only seen in the special edition. So but it's a very plausible story. So it's great to see people rallying behind that and embracing it, for sure.
So it's nice to know that there's some more unifying things that we have got, these last few years. It's not all doom and gloom.
No, I would agree. And let me just kind of ask you. I don't want to keep this much longer than 45 minutes. So we have less than 10 minutes. What are your hopes for the universe? Like, what do you are you hopeful? Like, obviously, we are dealing with kind of two separate groups of people who are let down, or maybe they like parts of the prequel. Some people, like I don't like Prometheus at all, though I love to watch it because it's so beautiful. But I love parts of Covenant. I mean, I will watch parts of Covenant over and over. But we're in this place where we don't really know what to expect. The last two films haven't really performed well. What do you feel like is the future of Alien?
What I would like is a soft reboot. I'm at this point where, Ridley Scott, you've burnt me twice now. I don't think I've got the goodwill in you to go through with this a third time. But I wouldn't be surprised if he does get to finish out his prequel trilogy. He's very obviously cozying up with the new overlords now. He's doing Merlin for Disney. So I think there's a reasonable possibility that he might get to do a third one. I don't really want it though, just because I don't trust him to handle Alien with care.
Yeah.
He's more interested in David and the AI stuff, and that's great because I love David. David is one of the main throughs of Prometheus and Covenant that I genuinely love. Even the Dr. Frankenstein, Dr. Moreau kind of David that he turned into in Covenant, I can dig that. But he's more interested in that than he is with handling the alien, to the point where I think he doesn't show the other films any respect. Doesn't show Aliens or 3 or Resurrection any sort of respect, and it's just what he wants to do, he'll do. I don't like that.
Although it might push him, if he's, there is some speculation, who knows where it comes from, but there is speculation that Fox is giving him a small budget to finish his trilogy. I don't know if that's true, but it might really push him to make a really good third film in his prequel trilogy. Really, it might force him to.
We can hope so.
I don't. It would really have to be something where he's, collaborating and kind of turning, I don't know if this is even possible, but kind of stepping back into the man he was in 79 and with more limited funds, working with the cast more. And, there's such a big difference between the Ridley Scott who is directing today as opposed to the Ridley Scott who was directing in 78, making Alien, where he was under stringent budget limitations, but he also brought in his cast weeks ahead of time to rehearse. And so by the time they got in front of the camera, these people really knew each other. There was a real sense of camaraderie among them, and you saw it on camera. So who knows? I'm hopeful. I'm really hopeful that if he's given a third film, that it might be something really, really awesome. But that's just me.
Yeah, I hope he does a good job with it, but I think he's completely different, man. He plays the game And that's what means he gets to make the films he wants to make, because he plays the Hollywood game. He comes in under budget. He always brings his films at 2 hours. He knows what he's doing to be able to keep making films, and that's what he enjoys. He's not, it's not Alien days. He's not punching half the set, the roof of the set in over frustrations with dealing with the studio. He's rolling with them, and great for him. Great for when we get films like The Martian. That film made me think that there might have been a good hope for Covenant. Now, let me put it down. I do enjoy Covenant up until that last third. So for the most part,
we agree in that respect.
Yeah. So for the most part, I do genuinely enjoy Covenant. It's probably just under the initial trilogy for me, above Resurrection and the AVPs and Prometheus. But it's just how he handles the Alien. I don't particularly care for it. I would hope that what we'd get is, they'll hand it off to do New Blood. They'll do I said soft reboot earlier. By that I mean like a sequel that's set contemporary to Aliens and Alien 3, but it's off to the side, out the way, where they can tell a story at the same time, and that doesn't intrude on the other stuff, and just get new talent involved, get a new storyline going off somewhere, stop revisiting Ripley stuff, stop recycling her sort of archetype character. Just new blood. That's what I want.
Yeah, absolutely. I would agree there. And just from the speculation and rumors about a series, it does seem like Fox is committed. I don't know what's going to happen to the name Fox, if they're going to, from what I know, they're going to remain Fox. They're just going to be, the parent company will be Disney. None of that is official. That's just what I've been told.
I definitely heard that there was reports of them keeping Fox 2000 and Searchlight. Mm-hmm. I think it was, but I never saw mention of any official mention anyway of what they'd do with the the main bulk of Fox. And ideally, that's really where the future of Alien will lie. It won't be under the Disney banner. It'll be under some other company that they own. Yeah. Which is what they've always done with R-rated stuff in the past as well. They owned Miramax at one point, if I remember rightly, when it was putting out all Tarantino's crazy R-rated stuff. Yeah,
for sure. So lastly, I just want to kind of ask: is there anything happening at AVP Galaxy? Anything that you're working on that everyone who's listening to this should kind of be on the lookout for?
Oh, we're always working on something. So I'm trying to make better use of the YouTube channel that we've got going. So there's lore videos going up, a much slower pace than the likes of the big boys on YouTube, but it's going up. Because I go back and I research it all. I start from the beginning. I read everything. I watch everything again, and write it all up from basic. So it does take me a bit of time to do these. We're doing Let's Plays of the various games. We're 2/3 of the way through AVP 2010. We'll be revisiting all of them. Isolation, Colonial Marines, the older stuff. Hell, even probably Trilogy at some point, just because of how special that is to me. Of course, we've got the podcasts always going every month. I try to do, sometimes twice a month. I'm working on probably one of my favourite interviews right now, actually. I just recorded a interview with Cynthia Scott, who played Dietrich in Aliens, and that was such a fun interview to do. I'm really looking forward to putting that one out.
Yeah, that's great. She's awesome. Very small role, but it's great.
Honestly, they're the more fun to do, because we're at this. We're at this point where we've got Charles de Lauzirika's phenomenal box sets, and all the Michael Biehn and Bill Paxton and Sigourney Weaver stories have all been told, and these smaller parts didn't get the same sort of attention in those box sets. So there's so much stuff that we might not necessarily know about these guys, which is what I learned about, like, Cynthia. There was stuff in there she told me that she'd filmed that I'd never known was filmed, and hasn't appeared in like the special editions or anything. So there's so much fun and so many hidden gems to be had in talking to people like that. So yeah, podcasts every month, guys.
Awesome. Yeah, of course I've listened to yours. I think they're awesome. I don't listen to them as much as I should, just because I'm not a Predator guy. And I just, I'll watch the Predator films. I enjoy them. I'm just like, they're very different experience, and you probably know this, than Alien, where Alien is really layered, and there's so much beneath the surface with Alien, whether it's Ripley's story or even the prequels, which I don't like as much. There's a lot there. Whereas with Predator, for me, it's just more of like, oh, big ugly guy, killing. All right.
It's interesting because, a lot of people will say that about those films, but I read a recent sort of dissection. It's probably on your group as well. Eric Hansen, I think it is his name. Sort of dissected the meaning behind Predator and the way it was put together as this deconstruction of, sort of masculinity kind of thing and technology. So I think there's a little bit more in it than a lot of people tend to give it credit for.
Yeah,
but I'm not saying you're not giving it credit.
No. I just think it's one of those things that it different things hook us, and for me, I think the star of the Predator films is the Predator. Whereas for me, what connects me to Alien is the human journey, and I'm a creature guy for sure. There is something a little bit too classically machismo about the Predator that just doesn't appeal to me the way football doesn't appeal to me. That's the only way I can explain it.
That's what you get when Arnie's, the sort of big header of the franchise. The Predator will never escape Arnie as as a main focus of what people think of that thing. But even then, I will say this now: just because it says Alien vs Predator on the title, it doesn't mean there's twice as much stuff to Alien as there is to Predator, and there's half as much again for AVP. Most of the content tends to actually be Alien, simply due to the sheer amount of content there is to discuss. At the minute, yeah, there's a lot of Predator sort of news and stuff because that's what the film is. The next film's the new Predator film. And I honestly, I do try and balance it a little bit, but it's so hard to do just because, like I said, the amount of content.
For sure. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. Thanks for taking the time. I know you got a lot to do, but it was just important for me that I just feel like and believe, and you know this, that you are really a pillar. I mean, before I started Perfect Organism, the first person I went to was you, saying, is there an Alien podcast, a formal one? And you were like, no, we do one, but you guys are, AVP, so it wasn't like a pure Alien podcast. And I, of course, you know how I mean that. And I really attribute you and my friend Philip, who does the Dark Crystal podcast, as being people that inspired me to kind of start Perfect Organism, and we're kind of the only thing of our kind, aside from what you guys do and some of the Minute podcasts, and we are who we are because of you guys, in large part. So,
thank you very much.
Absolutely, credit where credit is due, and
that's a shame in itself as well. Just how condensed the fandom has become.
What do you mean? In what regard?
So, I remember a ton of websites. I remember a ton of communities and the forums. And, there was another podcast that tried to start up, but they only lasted a couple of episodes. So, I don't know. I feel like I've seen it condensed down a little. There's 3 active Facebook groups. There's, 1 active old school forum. And unfortunately, we've got Clara now as well, with her blog.
She's so awesome. I love her. And she's such a needed part of fandom, too.
Oh, God, yeah. Just that enthusiasm is so infectious. Mm-hmm. I love it.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to stop recording there.